Hello.
Hello, here with Tony Nicholls.
Here with Sophie Tidman of Mayvin. How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. How was your day, Tony?
It was a good day. Nice to be in London. I like being here because where I live is very different, as you know. I've just been walking through King's Cross and down the canal there, just thinking it's a bigger version of Castlefield in Manchester. So just feeling slightly at home, really. Yeah. Not that I live in Manchester now, but that's sort of where my hometown is, really.
Yeah, I was walking through London today as well, and I used to live around Soho and Fitzrovia, so I was there, and that felt really familiar. And then I was in Bloomsbury, and that felt really familiar. You know, that kind of university campus feel that it has, and lots of bookshops and Japanese restaurants for some reason, often together, and it just felt like different but also familiar. It's quite a nice feeling. I thought it was a bit like flaneur, being a flaneur, sort of walking through the city as a sort of engaging with it and also observing it from the outside at the same time. I always really like that feeling. It feels very liberating, particularly post-COVID.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to come back to
that. People in three dimensions have still got a freshness to it, I think, post-COVID. I'm not sure I'll ever lose that now. I think I'll always appreciate that now.
Yeah, the rest of my week was really nice with client work, but I still felt being at home with the grey skies on the computer the whole time, the quiet. I just felt a bit flat. So it was quite enlivening today. In lots of places in the House of Commons, having a bit of tour around the House of Lords and things, and which is an amazing, just the patterns there. The Gothic interior design is quite incredible. So it's slightly exhausting, isn't it? Having all that sensory information.
Yeah, I've been sat in a meeting room all day, but it's been a really good day because we've had a really good meeting and we've had a laugh, lots of laughs, and it felt like it was a sense of relief to be seeing the light of days and to be feeling like the world's appreciating Mayvin through what we're doing out there, getting some really good feedback, etc. So lots to be appreciative about, which is of course what we're talking about today, which is partly around appreciative feedback based on the last podcast we did.
Yes.
A friend of ours, Carol, said, can you talk about positive feedback and why sometimes that's difficult for people to receive? But we also talked about maybe, let's broaden that out to being, so what's it like to have an appreciative worldview? Yeah. So we thought we'd just chat about that and see where it takes us.
Yes.
Maybe there's something about progress. Maybe there's something about we always have to be doing better. We're never good enough. So to hear somebody say, I really appreciated what you did there, and then I don't know about you, what the percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but a large number of people, when you offer them that, then make some dismissive remark about, it was just nothing, or it was somebody else, or, that was a fluke or something.
It's never enough. Nothing's going to measure up to the enormity of what we face now.
Right.
But
and maybe it sets expectations that they have to do it again.
Well, and also this idea of heroic leadership as well.
Right.
And having the solution. It just cripples people. It's so paralysing. I think it's such a cause of anxiety, and also goes alongside this idea of the ticking clock.
Yeah.
Things haven't just got to be solved. They've got to be solved by Christmas.
Yes.
This arbitrary date of Christmas.
Well, they literally have this clock, don't they, which is the end of humankind. They have this clock, don't they, and it keeps ticking ever closer to midnight or something. So.
Yeah, is that the nuclear thing? Yeah.
What a very appreciative way of looking at the world, yeah. So the only way I've found to counter the way that people react to having positive feedback when they become dismissive of it is to encourage them to just say thank you and to leave a space, either in their own mind or in the moment, to just hear what was just said and just say thank you and stop themselves saying anything else for a few seconds, such that they can create a space for appreciation of what's just been said. I
did it with an action learning set, actually. Instead of, it was the end of a programme. And instead of doing I did reflections at the end of the action learning, somebody's airtime, but also reflections and appreciations. So somebody just has to sit there because they can't talk. That's the structure. And I mean, I was losing authority by this stage because it was the end of the programme, but mainly people did it. And they just had to sit there and receive it.
I've used that process when people are on such a downer about themselves that they're not hearing. So, okay, we're just going to sit here now and 6 people are going to say something positive about your presence today. They may not have met you before, but they can say something appreciative about how you've shown up today. And it usually ends up it's very emotional. It's a very emotional process.
Yeah. And it's often when people are at their lowest ebb that they've got so much more to be appreciative about in terms of how they're showing up, because they're facing into it.
Yeah.
And that's when they really need to listen to it. Yeah. I think I realised, it took me a while to realise this, that I really like affirmation.
Right.
And it's okay to say I need that. I think a lot of people do. Some people need it more than others.
Yeah.
And I think it's very useful to go, that's what I need and that's what I'm going to ask for.
Yeah.
Because, the Firo B.
Yeah.
So some people needing more connection or inclusivity or control. And where you need a bit more connection, actually affirmation is really important. But I think there's a tendency to see it as a weakness.
I think with all of these things, there's always a potential shadow side to all of these things. So recognising that needing appreciation is a thing for me. Definitely. The meeting today, I noticed myself in meetings making an observation, recognising that's landed well and it's shifted some worldview around what we were talking about, and then getting some feedback at the end of it. Say, I really appreciated that comment, Tony. That feels really good, and I need that. I know I need that.
And otherwise you'd be at sea, right?
Right.
Like, isn't it? You're like, I thought I did something good then, but then it didn't seem to go down so well, and you just have it hanging over you, like, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
To bring it up.
Yeah, but it was appreciative. I was appreciated. My presence was appreciated. My contribution was appreciated, and I recognised that felt really good, and I'm okay with that now. In the past, that would have been a feeling of, oh gosh, I've got to repeat that now, haven't I? I've exposed myself. I've put my neck out, and now they'll be expecting more of that good contribution.
Really?
So maybe, yeah. So that was, in early days of corporate life, is be careful how much you contribute, because you might expect more of it. And of course, does that embarrass somebody else because they haven't contributed because of the hierarchy? So just noticing that from my younger career, but absolutely past that now. It's a case of, if I've got something to say and I think it's going to be useful, say it. And if it's not useful, that's okay too, because I'm with people I trust that wouldn't hold that against me or laugh or snigger, etc. So I feel able to take a risk now because I feel trusted in the group. But equally, if that became overplayed and I was grasping for that appreciation, then I think that becomes a shadow side where I start to make contributions for the sake of it.
Yeah. I think there's something really important about appreciation that's about valuing the diversity as well. So it's not, I think sometimes we're thinking very much in binaries, like this is a good performance, and then there's a sliding scale towards poor performance. Absolutely. This is what is a good intervention in a meeting, and this is what's not so helpful. Rather than, I think I was speaking to Martin the other day, we were having a bit of a walk and talk catch up, and he was bringing an issue, and he said, and I was like, oh, what are you kind of looking for from me on this? And he said, well, James would give me some feedback on this or this, and I suddenly just went, well, I can't do what James can do. What? Oh no, I'm not going to measure up to James. And then I sort of just decided to just get over that. And he was very appreciative about where we ended up and the questions I gave, and it was a realization. He definitely doesn't expect me to be James. He just sort of said that in a flippant way. But I'm not being judged on a linear scale. Right. It's like I'm being appreciative for the difference that I offer. Yes. That is unique, which is very freeing.
Right.
And I think appreciative inquiry has that breadth to me. It's not good or bad. It's like anything we're appreciating about right now. Like there's a freedom to it. I'm not quite expressing it right.
No, I think so.
You explain what I mean.
Well, the counter to appreciate. Where I think some people think what we're talking about is positive mindset. I don't think it's anything about that positive mindset. It's positive mindset, which is positive mental attitude, is to just be positive no matter what's going on in the world. And I just don't think that's a healthy.
It's not real.
It's not real. It's not healthy. An appreciative mindset is to appreciate sadness, to appreciate pain.
Everything's got value. Everything's got a place.
Yes. Yeah. To appreciate the human beings and the human frailty.
Yeah.
In all of its guises. That for me is what appreciation is about. It's not to dismiss pain and suffering and the challenges we have in life, but it's just to appreciate them as the part of rich tapestry of life, to use a cliche, rather than everything's just jump on the table and be positive.
Yes, I definitely think that's the case with negative stuff that is usually pushed away in an organisation, particularly tensions or conflict. Whereas before, if you talk about change management in organisations, change comes from tension. like in a great symphony, there would be periods of tension building up, and then it would resolve. It's a constant cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, like tectonic plates. They're just rubbing up and everything, and something snaps.
Yeah. So actually kind of flowing with it and going, oh, there's tension here. That means there's energy for change. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is uncomfortable. What's the gift in that?
Right. How can you appreciate that discomfort for what it is and inquire into it such that you're getting closer to what kind of, what's going on here that either is enabling us or is holding us back. That's the inquiry, I think. That's the space to go to. So it's, brings in Reddy's model around teams spend 99.9% of their time doing work on task, and the suggestion is or the recognition of high performing teams is that they actually spend some time also talking about how they're performing the task, their agendas, their meeting processes, their packs, etc. And they also spend a proportion of time talking about their group processes, their relationships. How are we with each other? When you said that, I felt this. Can we talk about it? So creating space in organisations for them to talk about how they're doing the work and how they are with each other is often the breakthrough, I think, starts to help people shift.
Yeah, the other model that I was thinking of, in fact, at the same time, was the Bridges model of change, which we've been using a lot recently for various reasons for clients, but thinking about beginnings starting from endings, and before you get to a new beginning, going through this period of being in the wilderness. Which has lots of mythical, allegorical kind of roots and religious roots about literally Jesus being in the wilderness and it being a period of discomfort and suffering, but also hugely transformative and regenerative potentially if we can really be in it rather than as most of us want to do, push on through it.
Push on through to the next thing. In organisations, it's the next action, the next objective, the next thing we need to be measured against rather than slowing down. Just slow down, appreciate the pause, appreciate the gap, and spend some time being with each other as well as doing things. And when I use that model, I always counter it with, because the actual numbers are 70% on task, 15% on process review, and 15% on maintenance, what we call maintenance of relationships. And when you think that through, 30%, that's over a day a week, not doing the work. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. It's part and parcel of the culture, and it's how you have conversations all the time. That's both task and review at the same time. So it's woven into the fabric of the organisational life.
And how much time is it costing you not doing this stuff? The gossip, the U-turns,
the assumptions,
the angst.
The emotional labour associated with not leaning into the human side of the organisation. What have you been appreciating lately, Tony? I think I just mentioned I'm appreciating the three-dimensional nature of life because we spend so much time in a two-dimensional way now online that I really appreciate being with real people. I know they're real people online, but in real life with them, that it's just that fullness of looking at a whole human being and having a conversation that's not going through a cable somewhere or over some Wi-Fi. It's really appreciating that and hoping that I don't lose that.
Yes, we talk a bit about images of organisations and organising in our work, don't we? And I think organisations have become more 2D, increasingly 2D, and things being on the cloud.
Right. And
where are we physically in our organisations? Like, in a very real way, we don't use our hands very much as a culture anymore. And historically, using our hands was very connected to brain development.
Yes.
So can we just grow our brains independently of our bodies?
Interesting.
So I'm very interested in this idea of the sensual in organisations, the sensual present, like, what's real to us in our interactions. I remember the first time I had a proper job, and my visceral remembrance of that job. I was an economics consultant, so it was intellectual work.
Yeah.
But the office, which was in Dublin, in a beautiful old Georgian building in the south side of Dublin, had this lovely lush red carpet, and I always remember I often took my shoes off. It wasn't a very busy workplace, and it was quite small, a bit like Mayvin, and just walking on the carpet, and that was that's what I remembered. But people are physical beings, so I think I think there's something about really connecting that with that to make the work real.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we can just bash loads of stuff off, send an email. Yeah. I was with clients the other day and they were talking about how often they just send emails and then they tell people, well, we send an email. Don't you know right. This is important? We send an email. It's like, no, because it's not real.
It's not real. Yeah.
Because there's so many emails, everything's just become noise. So how can we reconnect to the present in a way that's,
Well, we talk about connection before content, don't we, in terms of where's the human relationship development in service of the task rather than just rushing into task. And there's something, I think you can do that online. Yes, you can. You develop relationships online, but I still think there's something about meeting somebody in the flesh for the first time that really moves that connection forward, and that relationship forward. And, there's all sorts of reasons why politicians and, certain business leaders are asking people to get back to the office. Usually it's, monetary, profit-oriented reason. But I have some sympathy in terms of encouraging people to at least consider how they meet face-to-face from time to time. And I think they are having a mature, most organisations having a mature conversation about this. But, that's what I'm appreciating, is that three-dimensional nature of life and the richness it brings.
Yeah.
What are you appreciating at the moment?
Well, I just turned 40.
Gosh.
I know, it's just numbers, so I don't really generally care about birthdays, but for some reason this has been in my mind as quite a landmark age and quite freeing. Like I feel quite, a lot of things are very settled in my life and there's lots to be excited about. So I feel very grateful and appreciative of doing good work with good people. Just the possibility. There's just a lot of social, organisational trends that are moving and lots of organisations are resisting that, but they're happening. I'm just fascinated to see how that wends its way and works out and how I embrace that. We'll try to.
So I turned 60 in April.
What?
Yep. And
nobody believes you, Tony.
Well, they do. And I'm appreciating some of the freedom that it gives me. We were talking about today in terms of, what is it like to become an elder, if that's the right word. I don't mean that in thinking I'm wise or anything. It's just there's something about that.
Yeah, Helena Clayton talks a lot about it, doesn't she? Yeah.
So what does that mean? And I'm appreciating the great work we're doing with clients at the moment. The feedback we get is humbling, and we are recognising the difference we're making. So I appreciate that, and I'm also becoming excited about what retirement might look like, or semi-retirement, or some kind of shift in the working pattern that means I've got other things to do. So I'm really struck by your comment on hands, and so is that why there's something about, for me, picking up a camera. I pick up a camera and something shifts in me in terms of it becomes a more like a meditative process, because then everything is in the viewfinder. The viewfinder becomes my world then, and there's something about appreciating use of hands, the DIY, for example. Yeah. The messy plastering I'm learning to do.
Yes, I love how all your weekend stories are related to making something called plastering, and usually it goes wrong in some way. But you always do it.
I do it, and I learn. But it's fun. The rest of the world sort of disappears for a while I'm doing that. So I get into flow in that process. But I'm going to reflect on this brain development and use of hands, and whether that that's an important aspect of being human.
Yeah, hands, heart, gut, and I'm also, I've got a bit of cognitive dissonance, and it's what we've been talking about. Like, in fact, Carol, I was talking to, she was reflecting. Who instigated this podcast, was talking about how brilliant she felt when she was 40, and I was like, yeah. And in some way, feeling, I don't even like the word in your prime, because actually it's every age has something to offer, and I feel like in my 20s I didn't know what was on offer, and I really know what it is now. I think I was always trying to get somewhere. So that's just being 20, isn't it? But the cognitive dissonance is, but things are falling apart around us. Is it okay to feel like that? Am I just being in my own bubble? How do I be happy and fulfilled and flourishing and thriving at the same time things are falling apart? That I don't know how to. Maybe that's just being in the mess
Maybe that's being in the mess, and maybe it's localizing your perspective to who's around you and what the difference you can make closer to home to help people, to seek help yourself. Maybe that's how do we localize and appreciate what's around you?
Yes. Well, that's one of the key skills of leadership, isn't it? We sometimes talk about. It's kind of like being able to see at different levels of the system.
Right.
Like, yeah, I can see the global.
Yep.
But I often can't act in that sphere. I need to act in a different way. So I can see different levels of the system and be in different ones.
Yeah.
And
how do I help the system?
Take the global perspective into the local.
Yeah. Translate.
But not be paralysed by it.
Yeah, not be paralysed by it. And not overshare.
Yeah.
Because if you see what's going on globally and transfer that anxiety to the rest of the organisation, you may well paralyse the very people you need to step up to help you solve some of these complex problems.
Yeah.
So there's a judgment call, I think, about how you what you bring down to the different people in your organisation.
Yes, we do that in Mayvin at different times. Never know the right level.
I think it's a judgment call, and I think my sense is that if we are open with people and we listen to them, then we'll hear when we're oversharing, if that makes sense. I think it's the same with, if we get back to the subject of feedback, there's a choice to be made about what you share and what you don't share, both in terms of where you think there's a development need, but also where you can appreciate someone. Because if my experience is, if somebody's not ready to hear some positive feedback, it can actually be quite damaging for them. They reject it outright, and suddenly you close down the relationship. So it's a judgment call about what's best for me to share right now that's either going to pick them up enough or keep the relationship going, such that in a week or so, or next time we meet, they'll be open to something else. So gaining entry, we talk about gaining entry in a contract in consultancy cycle, don't we? So do I have permission to do what I'm going to do? Just to assume that giving somebody positive feedback is a good thing and the right thing and you should do it all the time isn't necessarily, I think, the right thing to do. I think it's still a judgment call with appreciative feedback even, because if they're not ready to hear it, I think it could damage the relationship.
Yeah, and appreciative feedback about an organisation can be sometimes threatening to the leaders of that organisation who want to problematise, who want to scapegoat.
Right.
Certain aspects.
If everything's okay, what's the point of them? So do you have a process? So you talked about in the action learning set, sort of saying, okay, we're going to give a round of appreciative feedback now. Do you have a process? Do you have a way of talking to people, individuals perhaps, where you see that they're not wanting or they're not hearing positive feedback? Is there a way that you help them appreciate the feedback you're offering them, or that has been offered by others to them?
I think there's silence, like being quieting, just asking them to hear it, and being very clean in the language. So I see this in you. You're courageous. None of this quite, I think.
Right.
No, you're courageous.
Right. Clean language.
Very just direct and clear. We sort of, sometimes feedback is very, we tend to caveat it, good and bad.
Yep.
And it gets away from the, it's so powerful sometimes when you just say to someone, you're courageous. I see courage right now. When do you in normal life ever talk to somebody like that?
Right.
Like, it can be really affirming. Oh, sometimes I'm just quite humorous with it. I'll just say, no, I don't want to hear. No, just take it. That's it.
Right.
Sit with it.
So I notice the authenticity in your presence when you say that. I would appreciate you giving me feedback like that. Very direct, very clean as a way, in terms of there's no caveats to it. There's no buts. There's no, as you say, quite courageous. That works. And I think there's something about that's very different to how I was trained as a line manager too many decades ago, where there was a process that you use. You start with something appreciative to warm them up, so that you can give them some really bad feedback.
The shit sandwich.
I'm glad you said it. And then you finish on something appreciative. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like don't let them get carried away.
Right. Yes.
Don't let them get up themselves.
Yeah.
So that's not how people work.
No. And I can imagine with that kind of, well, I know from that kind of fit, when you're authentic with your positive feedback and appreciation, they're then more ready to hear what it is they actually do need to think about in terms of development, because there's the trust. The trust is there, and you've given them something to build from. You've given them a solid base to, okay, so I'm courageous. All right, so how do I utilise that courage in developing this particular bit of my capability that perhaps isn't there yet? So it's appreciative inquiry. In every system, no matter how broken, there's something that's working, so let's build from there.
Yeah, just really seeing things, seeing people as they are. I think it's very powerful. Like when you're usually giving that feedback, I don't know, their face takes on a bit of a new dimension. They look a bit different. You notice something different about them.
So often the reaction is tears, which says so much about how we don't appreciate people in society, and that we're always knocking them down and they're never good enough.
Yeah.
We are never good enough.
Yeah.
And to hear some
total surprise as well.
Yeah.
I've really appreciated how free this conversation has felt.
Yeah.
With the wine.
Which I noticed
really
you finished before.
Yeah. Well, I think we've really settled into a bit of a rhythm.
And I think
comfortable.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation today, very much so.
Nice bookend to the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nice ending.
So thank you to Carol for suggesting it.
Yes.
And thank you for the company and the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's us.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Sophie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.